everybody. This is Gary Trenzel, Chair of the Hopkinton Planning Board, and I'd like to give you a quick recap from our March 20th, 2023 meeting. I think it was a very full agenda for us. We met for almost 4 hours. And from an agenda perspective, I'd kind of break it into three different categories. We had some administrative items to take care of, specifically, and I'll get to those details in a moment. We had a series of proposed zoning bylaw changes for annual town meeting. And then we had a number of hearings, both continued hearings and new ones. So let's start with the administrative items. And the biggest piece of this was some additional discussion on the Turkey Ridge project, which is up off between Lincoln Street and Cedar Street Extension. It's important that there's some timeliness to it because the developer in their construction actually unintentionally disturbed some of the land that is slated to be conveyed to the town at this upcoming town meeting. And naturally, as a planning board member, the idea of open space is that it's undisturbed. And so we wanted to talk through how the developer is going to address that. So no action was taken other than a planned site walk this coming Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. The applicant has also put together a corrective action plan with a series of steps of which they hope will mitigate the risks or the help mitigate the problems that they've created. You know, that we'll go ahead and take a look on Saturday, and then we'll continue that discussion at our next planning board meeting. The second administrative item was was a discussion around acceptance of Box Mill Road, which is over by the schools. And this one was relatively straightforward. The planning board recommended acceptance of that to the select board, which actually has jurisdiction over street acceptances. For the zoning bylaws, and just as a reminder, these come from 2 different sources. 3 of them were generated through the Zoning Advisory Committee, and then 2 of them came to us via citizens petition. It's important to remind everyone that all of these will go to town meeting in May. And in order for any zoning changes to be implemented, it requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting, regardless of where it originated, what it was sponsored by. So the planning board is really just evaluating these and making a recommendation if we think they should be accepted. So the ones that stemmed from the Zoning Advisory Committee, the first was related to electric vehicle parking. And the idea here is that a developer is required to either install a certain number of parking spaces for electric vehicles, or install a certain or pre-wire a parking lot for future electric vehicle charging. Important to note, this only applies to new developments, so that it's not meant to ask landowners to go back and retroactively install electric vehicle parking. And the requirements actually vary depending on the size of the parking lot. Also worth noting that there is no requirement that they provide electric vehicle parking free of charge. So that really is a function of their own interests. And so the planning board recommended that one be approved at town meeting via a unanimous vote. The second one is related to rooftop solar and the exemption from site plan requirements. Again, this doesn't have any impact on ground mounted solar or commercial solar farms, but and this is really a function of solidifying a common practice in town that if a building owner wants to install rooftop solar, they do not have to go through a site plan review in order to do so. That one also passed unanimously 9-0. The third one related to inclusionary zoning. We continue to have some good discussion there. And the primary intent of that is one, to help preserve the percentage of affordable housing in town. I'm not going to go into details here because we didn't take a vote on it. But we actually continued this one until our next meeting. We did not have a complete review yet by town council. So more to come on that one, but the general intent of it is to help maintain the percentage of housing units in Hopkinton that are affordable. The second type that we had were citizens petition articles, and I want to remind everyone that this is a recognized and appropriate way for someone to propose a zoning change. Again, it has to go to town meeting, and 2/3 of the town has to believe that the recommended zoning changes are favorable for the town. So the onus is really on the sponsor to convince town meeting of that. The planning board's role is only to recommend either approval or denial or no action on those. So the first was on the corner of West Elm and Main Street, and the Covenant Church, which has unfortunately closed its doors, and the property owners would like to convert that from residence B to business. One really important note to make here is that houses of worship are allowed in all zones in Hopkinton. So that change in zoning, a proposed zoning change, would not have any impact on whether or not a church or synagogue or mosque would be able to be built there. So we had a lot of public input on that topic. And the board voted to recommend approval of that at town meeting with a vote of 6-3. The second one on the corner of Hayward and South Street, we did not take any action on that. We actually continued it to the next meeting at the request of the sponsor. And again, this is my understanding of the reasoning for the request from the sponsor is that they are considering some potential changes to their proposed article that hopefully might be more favorable to the applicant, to the abutters. They've heard a lot of concern, and I think they want to find some middle ground to address that. So given that we didn't have details of what it actually is they're proposing, we opted to continue that at the request of the sponsor until the April 24th meeting. So important to note, again, a lot of members of the public want to provide some perspective and ask questions on that. And we will allow all members of the public the desire to share their comments or ask their questions at the April 24th meeting. From a hearing perspective, we did have a couple of continuances based on requests from the applicants. So the earth removal permit at 0 Lumber Street, that has been continued to April 24th. And then the proposal major project site plan at 28 Lumber Street has also been continued at the request of the applicant. The other hearings that we discussed, first was the trails, and that's an amended site plan application. As we all know, that's been a particularly problematic site for us during construction. They've had to make a number of changes on the fly to address some stormwater issues and other design requirements. The good news is that with Beta's review, Beta is our town represented engineering consultants. They have addressed all of the outstanding items. However, we did not vote on it because we didn't receive the we didn't receive the plans and changes from the applicant until just a few hours before the meeting. So directionally, it looks like they've addressed the concerns. I think one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is that they are leaving the sidewalks in, and they are using a sloped granite curbing along the edges of the sidewalk, which I think is a really nice way to help preserve the sidewalks and help provide some protection for people that are walking. So I think that's great. And we should be able to get through our review and vote at our next meeting. The next hearing that we discussed was another amended special permit application for 17 Wilson Street. This is the commercial solar site on Wilson Street, and that developer or that applicant has a number of proposed changes, specifically primarily related to screening. And unfortunately, we also did not take a vote on it. Specifically, the board still has some concerns around how they intend to screen some of the equipment that is within view from the street that is a scenic road. And then secondly, the way some of the boulders have been moved around in a not very visually appealing way. So this is a tricky one because the site is already up and running, despite the applicant not having conformed to the conditions and requirements of their initial approval. But we're hopeful to wrap this up at our next meeting. We've gave them some very specific guidance on what we'd like to see. Hopefully they'll come back with a set of plans that meets our expectations. If for some reason they don't, we've started to consider what course of action we have, and I'd like to not go through this process, but if necessary, we can revoke their special permit if we find they're not in compliance. So that one was also continued. We had a good amount of discussion at 86 Elm Street. This is for a proposed new commercial building over in the industrial park there. You know, I think the biggest challenge for us as a planning board on this one is that per our bylaws, a stormwater management plan is not required if less than 1 acre of soil is disturbed. And the applicant is right up to that 1 acre limit. So as long as they don't disturb any ground beyond that 1 acre, then they would not require a stormwater permit. But you know, given the number of stormwater failures we've had over the last couple of years, it's certainly an area of concern for the planning board. There were a few other things that they need to address before we're able to take a vote. Most notably, there was some difference of opinion, or let me say that a different way. The zoning maps don't quite the applicant believes that the intent of the zoning maps is different than what they are actually shown to be. So we've asked for an opinion of our zoning enforcement officer, and then a few other cleanup items related to Beta's comments on that. So that one has also been continued. And then the last one for us that evening was a minor site plan for pickleball / tennis courts over on the Fruit Street property. This is coming to us from the Parks and Rec Department, and certainly something that I think the town is eager to have. But the primary work remaining is again with regards to stormwater management. It should be a relatively simple site. The soils drain well. But given the location of one of the town's primary wells over on Fruit Street, as a planning board, we want to make sure that any stormwater is going to be managed appropriately at that site. So we also have a site walk planned for this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. If any of the members of the public are interested in joining. So that is our 10-minute recap of a 4-hour meeting. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to myself or our principal planner, John Gelsich. So thanks everyone for listening, and have a great week.